Hi, and welcome to the Wealth Channel. I'm here today with Shelley Giordano and Don Graves, and we're talking about reverse mortgages. Shelley, let me start with you. I think the financial advisor community is somewhat wary of reverse mortgages. Why is that? How did that happen, and should they be?
Yeah, well, understandable. Historically, our product, our reverse mortgage product, really hasn't been in alignment with their clientele. Typically, if a reverse mortgage originator went to visit a financial planner, he would say something like, well, if you have clients who are going into foreclosure, give me a call. Well, these aren't your clients, right?
Right.
You're helping your clients have a good financial future, not a terrible financial future. So there was a mismatch there. And then another problem is that the way that the reverse mortgage, the HECM home equity conversion mortgage, was structured historically, there were a lot of acquisition fees at the outset. So those acquisition fees don't exist anymore. The product is based on use and not these high setup fees. So that is one of the reasons why planners just, if it's going to cost $10,000 to set it up, I'm not interested.
They were just perceived as very expensive.
Right. Right. And then, Dave, surprisingly, even after 30 years, financial advisors are not unlike the general population. They have this nagging idea, persistent idea in the back of their heads that somehow or other the bank gets the house in the end. And really, so we just want everybody to understand that a reverse mortgage is just a mortgage. You're just not making payments on the principal or interest. The bank does not get the house in the end. Title remains with the homeowner until the last one, and the loan is not due until the last one of them dies, moves, or sells.
And so if the home's worth $300,000 and the outstanding balance is $200,000, the bank gets their $200,000 and
the estate, the heirs would be entitled to the remaining equity. Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Don, any other insights into why the financial world might be wary of reverse mortgages?
I think 15 years ago, when I started, I was part of the first commercials that came out. It was James Garner, Rockford Files, or Matt Block, and then from there was Robert Wagner, and then we had Fonzie and Fred Thompson and Trapper John MD and Pat Boone, and all of these were flooding the airways, and the typical advisor would say, oh no, that's not my client. That's the client who says, oh, I can finally go to the diner and get a steak instead of a hamburger. And there was a perception that reverse mortgages were only for the house rich and cash poor. As a matter of fact, in the early days, AARP had a video that they put out that says, are you house rich but cash poor? Then a reverse mortgage may be for you. And that became really part of the DNA of the program. Oh, it's only for house rich and cash poor. And that persisted for years, though we on the other side knew there was other application. That was still an undercurrent, and no respectful advisor would want their client associated with something that had a negative stereotype.
Don, didn't we also start to see some research that showed some strategic uses for reverse mortgages for wealthier clients?
We did. Beginning around the beginning of 2012, we began to see some articles written. The first was called Reversing the Conventional Wisdom. Dr. Barry Sachs and his brother, Dr. Stephen Sachs, began to look at the investment portfolio and ask the question, is using the reverse mortgage as a last resort the best way to implement it? So they began to ask the three questions. If we could implement a reverse mortgage as a first option on the onset of retirement, set up a reverse mortgage, use it, and don't withdraw from the plan, does that make a difference? What about in a coordinated fashion where we set it up in the years the plan was negative, the following year we pull from the reverse mortgage, and we do it in kind of a coordinated sense or using it as a last resort? The results of that were profound, and that caught the attention of the financial planning industry, because what they discovered, that using the reverse mortgage as a last resort was absolutely, foundationally, and fundamentally the wrong thing to do for the typical retirement client. But the coordinated approach and the reverse mortgage first yielded a substantial difference in retirement outcomes. So yes, we were grateful for that. And then later on in 2012, Harold Ivinsky and the people at Texas Tech wrote articles, and then others began to come on board to say, you know what? There are some strategic uses to housing wealth, and that's very important because the baby boomers, as you know, as your audience knows, the 87% of them will enter into retirement as homeowners. 68% of them will have a mortgage in their retirement. And to fail to look at housing wealth as a way to help them to sustain either their lifestyle or to sustain their savings, to overlook that, I think, what's the word I'm looking for, would not be wise. So that's why what you're doing, retirement income planning, and looking at housing wealth is very strategic to the generations that's coming into retirement.
So the message is financial advisors should take notice that there are some new ways to use reverse mortgages. They should let go of their prejudice and pay attention to some of the research. They should read the articles, and they should start to think about how to use it strategically. You talked about income needs. I think even some of the research can show that you could even leave a bigger legacy if you use a reverse mortgage versus using up other assets.
Absolutely. And Shelley, you can chime in on that.
The conclusion of all the papers has been that net residual wealth, and you define that as the portfolio plus the remaining equity in the house, is greatly improved. And just even thinking about it, and if you were inheriting from your family, would you, from your parents, would you, as siblings, prefer to get money or the house? And from what we've seen in the reverse mortgage business over the decades that we've been in it, the family does a lot better if they can just split up the money, and the house is less of a component in the inheritance.
Okay.
And that's important. We're not advocating, and certainly what we say is this is not the conclusion. Reverse mortgages are not the conclusion. But certainly they have to be part of the conversation, that the prudent and strategic advisor is going to look at the data, look at the four most overlooked usages or strategies to reverse mortgages, and say, this should be part of our conversation. Retirement income planning, Social Security optimization, managing the sequence of returns risk or mitigating risk, and whatever it may be. Housing wealth and monetized housing wealth has a role in that conversation. And that's going to be very important to the advisor coming into the baby boomers. It represents a strategic opportunity to serve more and to create more client satisfaction and longer, more sustainable retirement plans.
That's great. Thank you very much. And thank you for watching the Wealth Channel.